Hello, everyone. Okay, good. I got rid of that line. I don't know why it was there, but I had to click some buttons. Buttons have been clicked. So this is part 2. Oh, that one hurt. This is part 2 of Egypt versus Israel, the tank battle for Sinai. We just saw 22 tanks, and they had to retreat, and only 6 made it out. So, on to the video.
This was a different army. This was not the same army I fought against in the Six-Day War.
They crushed the Israeli counterattack on October 8th.
So what I was thinking about, the end of the last video, I made a comment on those missiles that have the wire attached to them. And I was thinking, those were smart bombs that they were still smart enough to be able to, you could control them. But they were smart. They were the smart bombs of that generation. I was going to say that at the end of the last video, and I didn't even think it. It kind of hit me afterwards. So I said it.
Crushed it completely.
This is an unbelievable victory by the Egyptians, something that they have never achieved beforehand, and it is a stunning reversal for the Israelis.
By nightfall on October 8th, Egyptian forces have widened their bridgehead almost 10 kilometers into the Sinai. The ferocity and magnitude of the attack has forced most of the Israelis back, but a few remain trapped deep behind Egyptian lines.
We came to the conclusion that we have to try to evacuate the people from this position on the Suez Canal. The problem was that between this position and us, there were 5 reinforced infantry division with about 1,500 tanks. We moved. My tank was the left one, Shaul was next to me. When we entered in, the Egyptians opened fire. I saw saggers moving towards my tank. So you see a kind of fireball moving towards you. And when I saw a missile coming to me, I was braking my direction. And they missed my tank. And on my tank there were some cables of the Sager. After 2-3 minutes, I saw a group of 30 people on one of the dunes. And when I came to the range of 100 meters or so, I realized that they were Egyptian. And then I had my own personal fight, because it was either them or me. I used my machine gun, grenades, and then I had to go over them with my tank. And I killed all these 20 people. Then I realized that I was by myself. I took my binocular, watching, and I saw a monster moving. A gun and something undefined. And then I realized that there were soldiers on a tank. Shaul took all the 33 of them on his tank and moved out.
With their frontline soldiers rescued, the Israelis fall back to defensive positions near the strategically important passes through the Sinai Mountains.
From the 9th, a new phase begins, in which we are on the defensive, without any offensive intentions. Not to seek contact, but to rebuild our force.
As the Israelis pause to regroup, the Egyptians prepare for an enormous armored offensive. One they hope will drive their enemy out of the Sinai.
Is this just a desert region? Sorry. Somebody's here. Sorry. Is this just a desert that they're fighting over? Like, is there any inhabitants, or is this just kind of like a, I don't want to say a dead zone, you know, poor choice of words, but is this just a no man's land where your people aren't going to be living there really? There's really nothing to sustain you. So this is just kind of a desert kind of area, because this is a perfect place to have a battle if that's what it is. But if this is, you know, if I'm led to believe it's a desert and there's actually homes and all kinds of stuff, then that's a little more of I guess a concern. Yeah, I'm concerned about a battle that happened in 1973. I hope that there aren't homes there and people didn't get their homes destroyed. Okay. Shut up, Kris.
Good. October 14th, 1973. In just over a week, Egyptian forces have pushed 10 kilometers deep into the Sinai and easily repel every Israeli attempt at counterattack.
On the southern front of the October War, the Egyptians are doing well. Their cross-canal operation has worked. They've pushed into Sinai, but they have a problem. Their ally, Syria. Syria is not experiencing the same degree of success. Syrian forces have not only failed to secure their objectives on the Golan, but the Israelis are now smashing them.
Hoping to draw Israeli forces away from their Syrian allies, the Egyptians launch a massive armored offensive in the Sinai. Their plan, attack with 2 armored divisions in a gigantic pincer movement, aimed at smashing the Israeli forces guarding the passes through the Sinai Mountains. At first,
Okay, so I am under the impression that it's desert or mountain area. Okay. I'm also understanding more that the other video that I have watched about this talked about Syria kind of getting in, and then they were mad that Egypt didn't move as far in as they thought. But this video makes me believe that Syria didn't get in as far as they were hoping. I mean, maybe initially, but they got some resistance, so they kind of pulled back a little bit. And I think now I understand why Soviet Union, Russia, why they get involved from that aspect. That makes a little more sense now. But we're not to that point yet. So ignore what I just said. But that's if you don't know. But if you do know, then does that sound right? We'll find out.
and
after I
Egyptian tanks
unmuted.
advanced towards Israeli lines.
When the Egyptians renew their offensive on October 14th, the attack that they launch is the absolute antithesis of the attacks that they had launched on October 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. This time around, they don't have that same plan. The Egyptians simply lumber forward in the kind of clumsy frontal assaults that they had been famous for in '67. And this time around, the Israelis are waiting.
We received an alert that on the 14th, the 21st Egyptian Armored Division will cross the canal and try to advance and capture territory.
Very early in the morning, we were under a terrible artillery fire.
When the smoke cleared, the first tanks of the brigade that were opposite us were already upon us. First of all, we knew they were coming. We waited for them.
I saw hundreds of tanks moving forward. Tsunami. A huge wave moving towards you. And I said, oh God, how can I stop them?
It is like a Wild West duel. The first to draw stays alive.
We moved into fire position. And we fired on one tank after the other.
Every tank was behind camouflage on a hill, and only the guns were sticking out. From the start, in such a situation, when they are in motion and we choose the firing positions, that gives us a huge advantage.
Here is the case where our quality, gunnery quality, is important.
One of the Israelis' main battle tanks is a modified version of the American M48 Patton, known as the Magach. It is well protected with 120 millimeters of frontal armor and has a 105 millimeter cannon that can accurately hit targets at ranges of up to 3.5 kilometers.
The superb guns on the tanks that the Israelis are deploying in Sinai allow them to begin hitting and killing the Egyptian tanks long before the Egyptians are able to start destroying Israeli tanks. The Israelis have become expert at long-range gunnery.
We were fighting very accurately, aiming and destroying tank by tank. All the Egyptian tanks were in the area which was dominated by us, were destroyed.
Within simply a matter of hours, the entire Egyptian attack has been completely unhinged.
And they lost in this one day around 250 tanks.
Wow.
We felt the first time that we can make it.
For the Egyptians, the promise of victory now gives way to the reality of defeat, and Sadat orders his battered armored divisions to fall back to defensive positions. But these positions are vulnerable.
Chinese
When
farm.
originally formed, the Egyptians left a dangerous gap between their Second Army and the Great Bitter Lake.
Israel is now ready to grab the initiative and go back on the offensive. And they use this piece of information, this gap, this seam, to plan their counteroffensive. The Israeli plan is get to the canal, cross over it to get behind the Egyptian formations and to be able to tear them up from the inside out.
October 14th, 1973. In an effort to finally achieve victory in the Sinai, Egyptian forces launch a massive armored assault, over 1,000 tanks strong, against the Israeli defenders. But in less than a day, the Israelis destroy 260 enemy tanks, forcing the Egyptians to pull back towards the Suez Canal. But the Egyptians have left a gap in their lines, giving the Israelis an opening to advance to the canal.
The Israeli plan is get to the canal, cross over it to get behind the Egyptian formations and to be able to tear them up from the inside out.
Before the Israelis can cross the canal, they must secure their flank against the Egyptian Second Army, positioned a few kilometers north in a small agricultural area called the Chinese Farm.
We didn't know exactly.
That's quite a name. Why does it have that name? And somebody's going to tell me the Chinese own that land and they use it for farms. Oh, okay. But if that's not what it is, how did that name come about? Because that's interesting.
Where the enemy position were located. When I entered into the area which was north to the Chinese farm, I realized that I am in hell.
Wow. So over 1,000 tanks participated in this battle. Wow.
The Israelis perhaps have bit off more than they could chew, because they're in the midst of not only a heavily reinforced Egyptian infantry division, they're also in the middle of an Egyptian armored division.
Hundreds of Egyptian soldiers were firing. There were tanks, anti-tank gun, a lot of action. I was fighting against two divisions. The ratio was unthinkable. So I was firing with my machine gun, grenades, with my cannon. I realized that I'm in hell. We were all these hours under such a pressure of Egyptian tanks, infantry, everything. We could see a wave of tanks trying to recapture the positions that we already captured.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, and we will come back with the part 3. How many, how many rounds do they have for the machine gun? How many rounds do they have for the I almost said for the tank. The word is not coming. You know, this thing right here that goes kablooey. Yeah, how many of those rounds do they have? The word isn't coming to me, so I'm going to speak like a child. How many of the big things that they load in and it fires off and hits and goes kablamo? How many of those do they have? Shells. That's the word. How many of those kablamo shells do they have? The kablooey makers. The boom booms. Anyone knows? Pass that along to me. I have a thanks button. You know how it goes. You can donate to the channel if you'd like to. If not, no harm, no foul. If you do donate, you can tell me, give me some requests to make, requests to do, and I'll do those. You can still request videos. It just takes a little bit more time. You don't have to donate at all. And you can still request things. Those take a little bit longer. I think I just said that twice. Subscribe if you haven't. That helps me out. Give a thumbs up. That helps out a lot too. And if you don't like to do that and you like to give thumbs down, then I want you to put your mouth around one of those barrels right there, the kablooey machines, and then just let me hit the button inside, and we'll just see what happens, because that would make all of us happy. So until next time, you have a good day, have a good night.